another edition of Coatings Decoded, the Paint People's podcast, and that's exactly what I want to talk about today, and that's Paint People. We're going to use this space, the main Coatings Decoded space, to take a little bit of a break today and talk about who we are as Tnemec. So I started at Tnemec recently, and I would like to explore this company and bring you guys along with me. So in this episode, we're going to meet several of the people who were influential not only in me coming to Tnemec, but in my early days in Tnemec. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the recording that we have of an interview, and this is our very first episode of Built to Last, the People of Tnemec. For the first episode of this, what I really wanted to do is bring in one of the people who is most responsible for me ending up at Tnemec. So yes, my coworkers at Tnemec, if you're listening to this, it is all Brian Cheshire's fault. So Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jack.
Also, we have Jennifer Gleesberg, and Jennifer Gleesberg was one of the few people who interviewed me when I interviewed at Tnemec, and for some reason or another, she keeps taking my phone calls, so she ended up here on this. Welcome, Jennifer, to the show. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Jack.
That was an excellent fake laugh, and then we'll move on to Katie Duda. She, very much like me, spent a good portion of her career with one company and then joined Tnemec around the same time as I did, so we spent a lot of time together in some of our early onboarding processes, and I thought her perspective would be great to have. Katie, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks, Jack.
And so one thing that I will say is Brian is the sales director for our water and wastewater divisions. Jennifer is the sales director for our performance products, and Katie is the sales director for our industrial products. So I thought we could take a look at Tnemec and kind of through the sales director lens, if you guys have noticed that. So I kind of wanted to start. Jennifer, you can go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you end up at Tnemec, and tell us a little bit about your career at Tnemec.
Yeah. So, Jack, I started with Tnemec in 2002. I had just had my daughter, and she was 6 months old. And I heard from a family member that Tnemec was hiring in the customer service department. So I applied, and I was young, just out of college, and they apparently took a chance on me. And from there, I worked in customer service and then moved to our sales department and then to our kind of sales / inside sales / marketing department for a short period of time. And now I'm back to the sales department. So I've had quite the trajectory in the 22 years that I've been with the company, but all a positive experience so far.
And what I will say is, Jennifer, you're the only one on this episode who's going to say they've been with Tnemec for over 20 years. But one of the things that I've noticed that is a commonality at Tnemec is as you meet people, a lot of you have been there for 20 years.
Yes, I am, in addition to several others, what they call a lifer. So I probably will spend my entire career at Tnemec. Hopefully.
Well, then, hopefully, right? Fingers crossed. Brian, you've kind of spent some time with Tnemec in several different roles and a couple of our competitors. Would you like to talk about how you came here?
Yes, I came into the industry in 2002, which, yeah, as Jennifer mentioned, I mean, at the time was not the greatest job market out there. And so we were coming off the heels of 9/11. There was a lot of uncertainty in the world. And I was looking for a role out of college, and I was applying a lot of different places. My wife actually was attending a career fair, ended up handing a resume of mine to a paint manufacturer. And so, as you may blame me for getting you into this, Jack, every day I remind my wife that she's the reason I'm in coatings this many years later. So if I'm having
I'm sure that goes over well, right? Yeah.
It does, exactly. But it's always my the card I play if I'm having a bad day or if I'm having to travel somewhere long, that takes me away for a long time. I keep reminding her that, hey, you got me into this. But all joking aside, it's been a really good career, very dynamic industry. And I would encourage anybody that wants to get into coatings and corrosion. No one day is like the next. I come from a family where I was raised by an accountant. And so for him, every day was very black and white. It was sitting at a cubicle. It was the same thing over and over and over again. I knew early on, I did not want to do a job like that. I want to do something that took me out and really got me into different challenges, got me in front of different people. And so over the last 20 years, as you mentioned, I spent about 17 years at a very large coatings manufacturer in various roles. Ended up taking a leap of faith back, just going on about 5 years ago now, and actually left that company to come to Tnemec initially as a sales rep. And so I worked for one of our agencies, which, if many of you don't know that are listening, Tnemec actually goes to market through independent sales agencies. But one of the misnomers, I guess, that I had about that was, when I came in and interviewed, Chase Bean, our president, shared with me that the average tenure of a Tnemec sales rep or an outside, agency sales rep was about 19 years. And so going through that model, that there seems to be a little more of a vested interest, which tends to lead to more longevity.
Sure.
And so ended up kind of my path got a little weird from there. I ended up actually leaving to another coatings company in a senior marketing role. And then about two and a half years ago now, came back to Tnemec in the role as a sales director for the water and wastewater markets.
And what brought you back?
To be honest, when I left the first time, it was really hard. And it was because of that culture. And I know that sounds cliche saying that, but the culture here at Tnemec, it truly is a family organization. We're a big company. We have our hands in a lot of things. But I feel like even throughout that 100-year history, we haven't lost our way. We haven't forgotten who we are. And to be honest, I really miss that.
Well, and that's what this independent little series within Coatings Decoded is really going to be about, is the culture. And we're really going to get into that. But we have one more introduction to get through, and that is Katie Duda. And Katie, how did you find your way into the industry, and how did you find your way to Tnemec?
Well, I always kind of joke about this because it's not one of those things that you typically say, yeah, I was a kindergartner and I really wanted to sell paint. So there is a lot of questions about how do you get into this industry, but I had started back in 2000 and actually worked for my own family's coating company that started up. So it was a family-owned company, and that company went through a lot of transitions with buyouts and so forth. So I've started with a career as a family-owned company that had morphed into some other things with private equity and larger companies and buyouts and so forth. And it was probably that family mentality and the relationships that I had with, different projects and things over the years with Tnemec that really kind of drew me towards Tnemec. And I'm really glad that I did that.
That's awesome. And I think that's, one of the things that I really want to get across is that sometimes in certain areas of the world and the internet, when companies use family, it's overused. It's something, it's almost lazy internal marketing. So many people like to say we're a family because of the bad aspects of family. Like, sometimes you love your brother, but sometimes you just want to punch your brother in the face. And there are companies that use family in that kind of meaning. But since I've started at Tnemec, what I truly see is all of the good things that family means when it comes there. I feel like my boss actually cares about my family. And so when with that, how does the culture impact the way you approach your roles as a sales director?
One thing I would like to say, as it relates to that is really the collaboration. Having come from publicly traded larger companies, you naturally have a lot of silos that get put up. And so that there's collaboration is something that often has to be forced in some of those situations. I can honestly say here, the open book management style of the company, the cross-functional teams that we put together, it truly is very natural and it's part of the core of how we go to market. And so, we'll just say with a product release, and Jack, you could probably attest to this, being part of that team, being part of that product commercialization team.
Sure.
But you have all the key people in the room. A lot of things are thought out and hedged out before a product even hits the streets. And it's, just a scenario like that really speaks to how intentional we are about breaking down those barriers and breaking down those silos.
Well, and I'll add this caveat before Katie or Jennifer get there. What does that culture mean to you too? So not only how do you approach it, but you personally, what does it mean to you, Brian?
To be honest, it's, I'll look through the world or at the world through the lens of sales, and going into a situation, it's really forced me to be a lot more open-minded and really to consider other opinions more. And having that open culture and having that open conversation makes me look at the world. It makes me look at situations a lot more differently than maybe I used to.
I think that's really true. The connection with the people, having a support system, those were the two big things. Like Brian mentioned, being able to bounce things off of each other and understand that while like he mentioned silos, there's of course lots of different departments, but even though communication, in general could always be better, I feel like all those different individuals in different departments are talking to each other and that they're a resource if you need it.
I 100% agree. And it's super important to me. I feel like some of my successes or how I excel in different areas is because I am able to work with a lot of different people. And that's from, even within the company, or, all the different types of groups that we work with, is it engineers, contractors, specifiers, even internally, our lab group, our marketing groups, our sales groups, our production, all of these work together. And you are most successful when all of these people kind of collaborate. Because if you're just taking one or more, which is kind of like what you're saying, in silos, you're missing out on something else. And that was one of the things that I liked early in my career, was the ability to kind of reach out and have everyone help. And I feel like since I've been at Tnemec, it was one of the easiest transitions ever, because everyone has been so helpful and optimistic, caring. I mean, these are kind of the things that are, sometimes you think is silly to say, but it's really true. There's a drive to do the right thing and figure out how to work together to get there.
I totally agree. I think it's that good side of family that I was referencing earlier is the everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to succeed. There is a motivation within the company for Tnemec to do well. And it's kind of really cool to be a part of. Is there a memorable moment that you guys have had in your careers where you felt proud to be a part of the company?
So I think being here to witness our centennial, we started in 1921 and 2021, we hit 100 years. And yeah, if you think of 2021, there were some things happening around that time. We were kind of going through a pandemic, and not too long after that, we had a raw material crisis on not just Tnemec in general, but, the industry was experiencing that. And I think what I thought was really cool was to see how our small privately owned company came together to help. We had, weekly meetings, a lot more conversation. We were really trying to help solve problems that we in general weren't used to experiencing. And so that made me very proud to work for a company that was able to see through those challenges and come out better on the other side. I think we learned a lot of things that now we've taken with us into the future to make ourselves better as a company in general.
I haven't been here too long, but I feel like there's still a handful of things, which is really kind of awesome. One of my first trips to kind of spend some time with the technical service group, I was just meeting, everyone. So I'm the newbie, and I had a couple of questions, and I was thinking, hey, how can we kind of work around some of these products and kind of stretch them, figure out where we can use some things. And it wasn't just one, it was 2, 3, 4 different people come to me and have set up this entire demonstration of like, hey, let's really figure this out together. And this was in 10 minutes. Of asking a question. That just kind of speaks to me as to how forward thinking everyone is. It's not a question of, oh, how are we going to do this? It was like, oh, let's get it done and figure out, what we can make out of it. And I thought that was just a really cool experience.
I'd like to kind of rewind for a second, which will lead to one of my most, I guess, proudest moments being here. But, competing against Tnemec for years, and naturally competing against Tnemec in the water wastewater industry, there were times I would just want to knock my head against a brick wall, because it was just, Tnemec had the spec position. Tnemec had the ear of a lot of engineers and continues to, because Tnemec is constantly pushing forth new ideas, really trying to solve problems in the industry. And so in my career, I've watched a lot of innovation happen at Tnemec, and a lot of that was from the outside looking in, things like the SWOT test and the development of PermaShield. I'm on the opposite side of that, trying to compete with that. And so it's frustrating. And so when I came back, one of the things that we discussed in the interview was, a lot of the innovation that Tnemec, is currently putting out and then also has planned for the next several years. And that was really exciting for me to be able to come back and be at the helm of the division that's going to roll out a lot of these things. And one of those things that has started really, really happening in the last few years is this development of these next generation water-based coatings. They're still very early, I feel like very far out. But the fact Tnemec is really leading the charge there, to the point that over the past year, we've seen a lot of recognition from the industry, which leads to kind of one of those proud moments. At AWWA ACE this year, it was awarded the Innovation Award for these water-based NSF-approved coatings. And in my career, I had never been part of something that had even been considered for that level of an award. You got to think this is for the entire water industry. This is not just coatings.
Right.
This is competing against these valve companies and other
toilet makers, right?
Yeah, there you go.
yeah.
But major technology producers.
Yeah, for sure. No, I make light because, we're on a podcast, but all of the innovation that goes into the water industry, you don't just have coatings, right, Brian? You have all kinds of infrastructure.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So, but being awarded, and I don't want to make this about the award, it was more of just that continued, I guess, message of innovation, and that if you look at the culture, that would be one of the things that I would say it really sits at the core of Tnemec. And so being able to be a part of that and being able to stand in front of a room full of water industry peers and be able to be acknowledged for that as a company was probably one of my proudest moments.
Yeah, our lab's cool. We do cool stuff in our lab, and it's really nice to see things that are out there changing the way that we do business. And I'm going to do a little sidebar here because the water-based technology has touched each and every one of you and your market. Brian, you and Jennifer worked on a paper together to talk about these new water-based technologies, both for the water market and the architectural market. But then even Katie lately has been exploring surface-tolerant coatings with water-based and things like that. So you guys have all kind of seen the commitment to innovation and advancements, even just within the little niche of water-based. How does that commitment to innovation and the reputation for innovation align with what you guys do as sales directors?
I would love to answer that one. So, as Brian said, when you're the outside looking in, one of the things that I would always compete against was kind of water-based technology and kind of talking it down. It wasn't until I actually got here and saw some of the test data that I was like, wow, this is really legit stuff. And being in sales, there's nothing more important than being able to stand behind what you're selling and being confident in it and proud of it. And I think when you have all those things, it's really hard to compete against because, if you're doing the right things, then you can stand behind it and you can help other people stand behind it and understand it. And so when I started diving into some of the test data that we have at Tnemec, it's really impressive and really easy to stand behind and then promote to other people and figure out the right homes for it. And I have been super impressed with the breadth of places that you can use this type of technology and how outstanding the performance is in just a number of different applications. So, I know each of us probably has some different things, but I have found some really cool stuff with surface tolerance and in industrial atmospheres where traditionally you would steer away from some of the waterborne technologies. And it's really holding up to the solvent-based two-part types of products. And I'm pretty proud about that. I think it's a cool thing that we have to offer.
I want to kind of wrap this up with one last thought. And I'm going to open the floor to you guys, each of you, to give me one last thought before we close the podcast.
I think something different about Tnemec is that I know our senior management at a personal level, like the president of our company, while he's the president, Chase Bean, he is a very down-to-earth, personable gentleman. And I think that that's very unique. Like not every company, especially larger companies, you're not going to know those higher level individuals at that personal level and feel like they actually care about you as an individual and the success of the company as a whole. So I think that that's just something that I've always thought was very important and specific to Tnemec in general. So
Real quick before Brian and Katie answer, I will say you hit on the Chase Bean factor. When I interviewed, he gave me a plant tour, and we're talking about a fourth generation family CEO owner of a company, and he knew everybody by name and greeted them. And like, I left that tour knowing that I wanted to come work for that guy. And that was my big introduction to Tnemec and what the culture is like. And so I just wanted to share that because you mentioned him. Katie or Brian, one last thought.
I totally agree with all of that. I mean, Chase always has an open door and doesn't make you feel like you can, there's no reason you can't open that door and ask a question or pick up a phone. And I think that kind of goes through everyone in upper management. From my perspective so far, it's been very easy to have a conversation and get the support that you need. And I think that's what makes the clock tick, basically, is the fact that everyone does work together openly and fluidly and with a welcoming manner. Like, let's figure this out. And I haven't gotten anything other than that from any department that I've worked with.
And I'm not saying you always get the answer that you want, but at least if you have the door is open for you to get that answer, whatever
Exactly.
it may be.
But there is a unified desire to solve the problem.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
which is half the battle. I mean, seriously.
All right, Brian, one last thought.
Yeah, so I'll kind of shift a little bit here, a little different take. I'd like to mention the future here at Tnemec. And ultimately, I'm one of a small handful of people that have ever left Tnemec company and then came back. And so the joke is everybody comes here and never leaves again. So I'm one of the few fools that actually left and was able to see the light and was able to come back.
You used to have a
Praise God.
drinking problem. It's okay. I mean,
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Or the robots maybe made me do it, whatever. But the future prospects is ultimately what brought me back to the company. And when I came back in and was having those conversations, just looking at the level of innovation that was already kind of in the works, not only innovation in new products, but innovation in processes, innovation into new markets. Tnemec Company is pursuing opportunities in the marine market now. Who would have thought that, several years ago? We've got a lot of advancements with insulative technologies. And so you look at a company now that's been around for 103 years, a privately held company, you would almost expect there to be more of a status quo kind of attitude around here. Basically, hey, we have our niche, we do well at it, let's stay in our lane. But the beauty is the company is constantly thinking of this growth, not only in the markets, not only with products, but also into new international opportunities. And so looking at all that together, it really is an exciting time to be at Tnemec Company. And while a lot of things are changing, the beauty is a lot of things remains staying the same. And throughout all this growth and throughout all the changes through the years, the company has really never once lost their way. And that's a huge thing to say in today's world.
It really is. I think it's fair to say that no matter what the evil empire tells you, things are alive and well and growing and kind of awesome and exciting at Tnemec right now. With that, I'd like to thank you guys very much for coming on this episode, sharing your personal stories for the world, and giving a little bit of a glimpse into not only who Tnemec is, but who our employees are and how they feel about the company. I wholeheartedly agree with all of the sentiments expressed today by these three. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you. Love working with you all.
All right. So just to wrap it up, one of the stories that everybody tells people about is that Tnemec is cement spelled backwards. That's how the company got our name. So I am trying to get this joke to catch on, and I'm going to do it at the end of every one of these episodes. But at Tnemec, we don't go to work, we go to crow. Thank you very much. That's all I have for today. And you guys have a great one. We'll see you next time.